I remember the first time I heard about God. I was probably 4 or 5, and I was watching Bambi with my mother, and the part where Bambi's mother, as we know, died, I didn't understand it, and I asked my mom, where did Bambi's mom go? And she told me that she went to heaven, and I asked what heaven was, and that's when she talked to me more about heaven and God. And you know, being a little kid, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right, Mom. I didn't really think much of it besides that. I just, from there on, knew that there was a God, or thought that there was a God. So I guess that's where my thinking of a higher being first happened. Like, I've always felt like I was being watched and cared for by something besides my parents, but I didn't know what until she explained to me. So that's where the beginning of my my spiritual life, I guess you could say, began. Well, I think I'm going to move my camera. My family wasn't rich. We were actually kind of really poor all the time. But my mom would still, even when she was a single mother, would, you know, work her butt off to give me and my sisters things that she may never have had as a child. And I appreciate her and love her so much for that. But my mom quickly remarried, and her marriage, I feel, was out of desperation. The relationship while she was engaged and when she got married between my stepdad and my mom and all of us in the family, it wasn't good. My stepdad used to have really bad anger issues, and he would take a lot of his frustration out on me and my sisters, and I felt like I was the biggest victim. You know, having emotional abuse at home and going to school and having the same emotional abuse happen, because I was always teased for being the fat kid, because food was my comfort growing up, I think, definitely. You know, and then going back home and being teased. I had nobody to go to turn to. I didn't trust anybody. I was too scared to tell people. Like I said, I knew that there was a God, but I wasn't sure how to go about it. And this was probably about 3rd grade. So my mom and I and my sisters started going to church. And the people at this church were like the sweetest people I've ever met. And this is when I still lived in Columbus. I miss them, but like, they taught me about Jesus. They taught me about what he did, who he was, what he meant to us, what his sacrifice meant, like so many things. And I had better understanding about it, a lot better, you know, when my mom told me about Bambi, the Bambi God thing. But, so I accepted Christ when I was 9, and I was baptized, and I felt like I at least had someone to talk to about things. I had some comfort, but things didn't get better. I was still teased, and we moved to, oh yeah, I feel like this is important to mention, because a lot of the abuse that was going on, I was diagnosed. I would just go about things strangely. Like, it's really hard to explain right now some of the things I would do, but I mean, if you have questions, you can inbox me or whatever. But I had to go to counseling a couple times, and I was basically diagnosed with depression when I was like 8. And you know, I had my moments where I was fine, but for the most part, I was always a loner kid. I liked reading and writing and being alone and thinking about things. I liked music. I liked old music. I just didn't feel like I fit in with a lot of people, that people understood me. But anyways, I guess that's not that relevant. It might come in later in the story. But so we moved to a rural town, and now I was made fun of for my ethnicity. It was an all-white town, and they don't usually get people of color there at all. So we didn't stick with the church there. My mom's depression grew worse as long as mine did, and things at home weren't exactly the best. I didn't know who to turn to. You know, I started to make more friends, but I still felt alone and sad, and I didn't understand why I felt this way. I didn't understand why God wouldn't listen to me when I asked Him to help me. At least it seemed like He wasn't listening. So things kept getting worse and worse, and eventually I convinced myself that a loving God wouldn't allow a lot of things happening to me, and a lot of the worst things happening to people, you know, in other countries and even in this country, like murders and rapes and all that stuff. I was just like, you know, a loving God wouldn't do this to us. He doesn't care about us, you know. He probably doesn't exist. So I grew so deep into my depression that I basically denounced God for my life, and that's when things got worse. I would, you know, I would just do all these things to harm myself because I just wanted to feel something, or I felt like I deserved it because I was so unworthy of living. Like, I just didn't want to live anymore. I had friends who tried to support me, you know, help me and try to talk me back into God. I wouldn't hear any of it. I would make excuses as to why I didn't want, you know, to be involved with that. And then, you know, when you're a teenager, and even nowadays, you long for a relationship. And I've never had a relationship, and everyone else around me did, and I grew jealous, and I would hurt myself because I didn't think I was pretty enough for a boyfriend or good enough for a boyfriend. I would be negative around the house all the time. You know, my house was already negative. I wasn't helping the situation. And the whole time, I just said, you know, well, there's probably not a God, so who cares? I started to slowly believe in a God again towards the end of my senior year, and I was really unsure of my beliefs at this point. I would tell people that I believe that there probably was a God, but it's not important to me right now. And, you know, I was so happy to be able to go to college. There were lots of groups around, Christian groups, skeptic groups, atheist groups, groups for different religions, and I was always thinking at the same time, whoa, which we developed an eating disorder my freshman year. It basically took over all my freshman year, these thoughts of constant weight loss stuff. There was just a lot of hard things that was going on, and I eventually broke down. I tried way too hard in my life to please other people. That was one of the things that made me so self-conscious. I would always compare myself with other people, wonder why someone wasn't treating me the same way they were treating someone else. Just a lot of these things, and I just couldn't do it anymore. That night I prayed. I went to sleep and I had this dream. And it was so amazing. Like, I was falling in this never-ending black pit. I remember, my arms and legs, just my whole body was flailing everywhere. And I didn't care. I just waited for the fall to end and for me to, be splat open. I just didn't care to move. And while I was falling, there was this dove. And it's kind of weird because it's like you're falling, but there's this dove like next to me, and it was like, I don't know, it was like kind of flying too. It was just next to me the whole time. Like, it was still able to be next to me. I don't know. I can't explain it. I'm sorry. Anyways, there was this dove next to me while I was falling, and it was telling me to fly. It was asking me why I wouldn't fly. And I said that there was no reason to. That nobody cared. And I was too afraid of what they think of me. I just couldn't do it. And he just kept telling me to fly. And I said no. I just kept rejecting it. And he said that he was going to help me. I just have to believe in him. And I was just asking whys or what ifs. What if they think this about me? What if they think that about me? What if I fail? I'm too embarrassed. I'm a failure. And he said just to trust in him. He's the way. He's the right way to go. He's the right one to listen to. He told me to lift up my arms. And I trusted this bird. And I did. And I started to fly, and I woke up, and I was a completely different person. I definitely believe that was God talking to me. I researched more things on God and read my Bible, the Bible that I brought reluctantly, but I brought it with me anyways from home, read it. How I read it before and when I wasn't a believer, and then when things started to come together. So amazing. Like, even in a non-religious point of view, like, a lot of the stuff said there is so profound and excellent. Like, it just got me. And, the New Testament. Love the New Testament. Like, I started to read more of my Bible, more apologetic stuff, more theologian works. And eventually I accepted Christ back in my life.